we cover the primary education sector, so there's 2 national parents' councils, one for primary and one for post-primary, and we're over the primary sector. And we represent the voice of parents in primary education, and we also provide support services to parents in primary education. So that's just a little bit of where I come from. A significant amount of our work is looking at the area of parents' involvement in education. And that's why Aine's asked me to come and talk today at this conference as to how that impacts, I suppose, on children's learning and outcomes in their education, and how parents and all parents can get involved in their children's learning. I suppose research tells us that that parents' involvement in children's education at the early education and primary education stage actually has more of an impact in outcomes for children educationally than anything the school does. So that shows you the potential that parents' impact has on outcomes for children. That whatever the school does, if the parents aren't doing their bit in the home, it will have less of an impact of what the school is doing. So the research also says that parents can be involved in their children's learning over 6 different areas. First of all, there's the parenting area. So this is where parents, through all their parenting skills, support their child through general life, but also through their learning. And those 2 are very keenly linked. So if a child is having behavioural difficulties and the parent doesn't have the skills to support those behavioural difficulties, that can have an impact in the school, because the child isn't able to sit, they're not able to attend, and they can be disruptive. So all of the parenting skills that parents need generally are part of the parental involvement in education. The second area then is communicating, and this is communicating with the school. So we know that a lot of the time in schools, the communication can be notes in school bags. That can obviously cause difficulties for some parents if reading those notes can be difficult. But also the research is saying that notes in school, for children to do well, the communication has to be far more than that. It has to be two-way. It has to be a mixture of face-to-face and notes, but also that there has to be a proper communication, a proper dialogue between both parties. It's not a one-way process. The third type of parenting involvement is volunteering. So parents coming into the school and volunteering within the school. And different schools in Ireland do that at different levels. But certainly parents coming into schools and doing coffee mornings and Halloween parties and coming into the classroom maybe and helping out in the classroom is another feature of parental involvement. The fourth part, and I'm going to come back to this, is learning at home. So this is specifically what the parent does with the child in the home. The fifth area is decision-making, and we have, I suppose, examples of that in the Irish system through the parents' associations in schools and how they engage with policy-making in school, but also parents being on school boards of management as well. And then the last area of parental involvement is collaborating with the community. So parents in the school and the community working together to make the learning environment for children, I suppose, more inclusive and richer. So all of those areas, all of those 6 areas, research says are really important in children's outcomes in education. But what the research says is, out of all of those, the most important is what the parent does with the child at home. That makes more of a difference to outcomes for education with children than any of the others. So you can have very active parents in the Parents Association, on the boards of management, doing lots of activities in the school, but if they're not doing that piece at home, it won't have as big an impact. So this can put a huge amount of pressure on parents, because the most important area that they must be involved in is the learning at home. We know that when parents are involved in their children's learning at home, that they will do better, and that will have more of an impact in early and primary level than anything the school is doing on its own. And yet, parents aren't given very much support in that learning at home. All parents. It's not always very clear about what that is that parents need to do at home. So out of the learning at home, and when people hear learning at home generally, they often think of helping with the homework. Probably one of the most stressful things for all parents is helping with the homework. And now we're being told that this might be the most important thing. So that's not good. But actually, it isn't the helping with the homework. It's not having to know how to do the long division and the geography and the science. That's not the important piece. The two pieces that research have said are most important for parents' engagement with their children is, first of all, valuing education, making sure that it's valued within the home and that the child knows that. Talking about school, talking about learning and education, and putting that value on education and creating a learning environment in the home. So things like reading materials being available, having conversations about learning and having conversations about school, which can often be very difficult. I mean, the amount of parents that say to us that they ask their child what they did at school today and they said nothing. You know, did you like school? Yeah, it was fine. And it can be very, very difficult to have those conversations. But equally we say that, well, if you ask most adults what they did at work today, it's a very difficult big question to ask. So it's about how parents can break those questions down and break those engagements and conversations down. And all parents can have difficulty with those areas, but we do know that parents that have difficulty around literacy and numeracy skills have an increased barrier around those areas. How to make a learning environment at home when maybe they didn't grow up in a home that had a learning environment. How to have those conversations around education when they didn't have that. One of the key points of parenting children is modelling behaviour. So as a child you often learn because you see. And if people haven't grown up in homes where they have seen behaviours and had behaviours modelled to them, it can be very difficult for them as parents then to model those behaviours for children. The other area that is really seen as having a huge impact in the home, in the learning at home environment for children's learning outcomes, is parents having high but realistic expectations. Again, that's very difficult for any parent to have high and realistic expectations, because how do we know they're realistic? But if somebody's coming from an area where education was difficult for them and they struggled with their education, how do they even know how to begin with that conversation? So one of the key points of having high but realistic expectations is communications with the school. And again, that can be difficult when there isn't a common language around education and experiences. So these two things that are seen within the research as being very vital for education outcomes for children, although they cause challenges for all parents, they can cause particular challenges for parents who have got literacy and numeracy challenges as well. I suppose the good news is that both of these things that are really important don't require parents to either have a PhD or to be able to read or to be able to write or to do maths or to do science. They don't actually require that. So the good news is that we can actually start breaking cycles, because if we can give all parents the supports they need to be able to do this, to have communications with schools, to have communications with their children, to set the right environments within the homes, we know that that will make a positive impact for children. And most people, I think, sitting here probably know that more than me and a lot of other people, because it's quite often the very parents who have the difficulty with literacy and numeracy are very motivated to becoming part of their children's learning, and they want to break the cycle. They want the education for their child to be better than the one that they had. So I think the motivations are generally there for those parents, but I think the supports not necessarily are. And we need to create the education system that supports all parents to be able to give these supports to their children that we know through 30 years of research will make a significant impact on the outcomes of education for children. So thank you very much.